Hello and welcome to Free the Mind UK, a chat with a therapist. And have I got a really interesting guest this evening in the way of Stephen Blake. He's going to be talking about Pain2Go. But before I bring Stephen on, I'm going to play our intro video. Here we go.
Not sure what therapy to choose? Free the Mind UK presents a chat with a therapist. Join us live for an up-close informal discussion of the various holistic therapies available, helping you make that important choice.
Good evening, Stephen.
Good evening to you, and thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, thank you for coming on the channel. And you're going to be talking about your technique that you created, old Pain2Go. Before we really go into that, Stephen, it's normally customary to get a short overview of how you came across the technique to this point now.
Okay, so I was in pain all my life from back problems. More recently, I've tracked it down to about when I was about 8 and hurt my back and never really got over it. And I did things like plumbing and building and really struggled through it. And like most people with a back problem, it was there in the background all the time. And then sometimes it would flare up and sometimes I couldn't even walk with it. And I trained in NLP and hypnotherapy about 11 years ago.
Okay.
And there was a technique then called N-step, or the 6-step reframe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not particularly about pain, but you could do it to turn off pain. And a lot of people were asked to do it in the room, and we told how to do it, and then we did it ourselves. And people were working on, the things they ate, stopping smoking, and I just worked on pain.
Mm-hmm.
And because they taught us the technique first, I recognize all the sort of faults with it. And you're supposed to take your pain away, but replace it with 3 smaller niggles that would add up to the same sort of level. And I went, well, if I don't need it, why would I replace it?
Mm-hmm.
And so even before I tried it out on myself, I sort of like missed that step out and went, I'll just throw it away. And so when we did it on ourselves, that night there was a bit of a buzz going around the room. Everybody was like, oh, I've given up chocolate now. Oh, I haven't had a cigarette since. But the next morning, I was the only one still going around saying, oh, it worked for me. And everybody else is going, oh, I've started smoking again. I've started the chocolate again and so on. So I didn't really think that much of it. And I became a therapist helping people with anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a way to help people out of anxiety in one session.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean 1 hour, I mean a day's worth of,
Right.
but I did it all I grouped it together in one go. So I finished work for the day when they got better.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I was naive enough to offer a guarantee that if it didn't work, I'd keep working on you till it went away for free. Not realizing what pressure I'd put myself under. I've worked on thousands of people, and there's only a few that I couldn't help. So I got very good at doing that. And then I realized it was about 6 years ago, I read something that said physical and emotional pain are the same neural pathways.
Right.
And that might not mean a lot to some people, but it meant to me that this trick I'd learned of how to turn pain off, that I'd never used in a therapy session. I'd never offered it. I'd never done anything than I'd occasionally stop people in the street and say, are you in pain, and turn the pain off for them.
Really?
And I'd gone to parties and literally, are you in pain? And I'd turn the pain off for them. And then when I heard that, I thought, well, everything I've learned from helping people with emotional pain, I can map across to physical pain.
Mm-hmm.
And everything I've learned from helping these people in these few instances, in physical pain, I can map across to the emotional. It was a real light bulb moment. And so I started teaching, basically it was the end step I'd learned, but my variation of it, and probably 5 years of development on it. And so I started with pain clinics. I offered them free of charge, and people came for about an hour and a half. And the first one, 9 people came, and 5 left totally pain-free, and 4 left with a massive reduction in pain, and nobody left with the same pain they came with.
Incredible.
And somebody on crutches left without the crutches. Somebody had morphine, but a level 8 pain, even though we're taking morphine, and left with 0 pain. And I did a few more of these clinics, and it just every time I did it, I got better results. So in the end, it was very rare for me not to get people out of pain.
Wow.
And within 6 weeks, I'd put together a program and started teaching old Pain2Go. And we'd given it the name by then, which is exactly what it says on the tin. And by old pain, I mean chronic pain. And the only distinction between acute pain and chronic pain is if you've had pain for 12 weeks, it turns into chronic pain.
Right.
But to me, chronic pain shouldn't exist. There shouldn't be such a thing as chronic pain. And I've had so many different variations of what problems people have. And I haven't found any particular aspect of what people have that where I have to say, well, we can't work on that. Or it won't work on that.
Okay.
So it's going very well.
It sounds it, Steve. This pain clinic. Did people like come to your consulting rooms, or did you actually manage to work in a like part of like a doctor's surgery or something? Or?
Right. I tried the doctor's surgeries. Because I work internationally, quite often people say, oh, well, do you need a note from your doctor and all that? And in the UK, if you ask for a note from a doctor, you either wouldn't get it or he'd charge you £25 for it anyway. And then he'd probably say, but I'm recommending you, and it will fall back on me if it goes wrong.
Right. Of
So
course.
we get no assistance from doctors. And I literally wrote to the 2 local practices and said, look, I'd like to do this clinic within your practice. I'll do it free of charge. I can show you my work. I can even work it on you if you've got pain to prove it works. And I didn't even get the response that said, we're not interested, or you must be crazy if you think you can do that. No interest at all. So I just ran my own, put things up in the local co-op and said, come along on this day. And that was it.
Wow. Oh, God. I mean, practice is definitely the way to hone your skills.
Absolutely.
I do something similar with what I do. I do little taster free sessions, just to get that practice in. So what you do, Stephen, if you've got someone that comes to see you and they're on sort of, drugs to stop the pain, what process takes place there? Like if they come to see you, how are they going to know without reducing the drugs, if you like, whether it's actually
yeah.
You see what I'm coming from?
It's a good thing I do because a lot of things manage pain or reduce it or help a little bit.
Okay.
And you're not quite sure if it's going to last the week till you get there again to have the same treatment or whatever. When you come to see me, it either goes or it doesn't. It either, and if it doesn't go, it will dramatically reduce.
Okay.
And if I can't get it to go, then you're a rarity. I mean, we're not even talking 1 in 100. We're talking less than that. So there and then that it's worked. So even if you're on a massive amount of painkillers, you're on a massive amount of painkillers because it's not reducing it down to an acceptable level. And so you've still got that element of pain there. And it might be that without them, you're a 8 or 9 out of 10, but with them, you're still about a 5.
Yeah.
And so if that pain goes, now you know that you're out of pain. It's not that like, oh, there's a spare 4 that you, and that'll come when the drugs go away.
Yeah.
Because the whole concept is this, that chronic pain isn't necessary. Acute pain is absolutely necessary. It's a survival skill.
Of course.
So I made the wrong statement when I first started doing this of I turn your pain off. And of course, people went, you shouldn't.
Yes.
And I totally agree with them. You shouldn't turn pain off. But by the time it gets to chronic pain, Pain is just a message saying you've got to do something about this. That's all it is. And it doesn't come from the part of you that's hurting. Pain is manufactured in the brain, whether you like it or not, and that's the science behind it. So if I had a bad knee now, it would be my knee reporting to the brain saying there's a problem here. And my brain would be saying, what level of pain do I need to give you to make you do the right thing? Either not to put weight on it, or to go to the doctors, or to go to the emergency room if it's such a high level of pain.
Yeah.
And so pain is just that message. It says take action. Now, with acute pain, that's fine, because if it gets you to the hospital, or if it just gets you to run a burn under the tap until the pain goes away, then you know you've sort of dealt with it. But when it turns into chronic pain, you've had it for 12 weeks. Well, most things in your body have healed within 12 weeks. And so if it's healed and you've still got pain, it's unnecessary, because you've got a message saying, do something about this.
Of course.
And you're in your head, you're going, oh, I'm in pain. Nothing I can do about it. The doctor's told me there's nothing I can do. All I can do is manage it, or have a few treatments that relieve it a bit, or take some drugs, or have an injection. There's nothing more I can do. So you've got this internal conflict. The brain going, do something about it, and you going, I can't. Now, as we know, if anybody asks you to do something and you say, I can't, and they ask you again, they get louder. And this is why the level of pain goes up over the years. So anybody who's got chronic pain, that level won't stay the same for the rest of your life. It will get more and more and more, and usually until you die. So once I learned how pain worked, and it was actually all in the brain, so I'm never saying to anybody, you're thinking of this, you're making it up, you're causing it. It's not anything like that.
No.
Your brain is making a decision for you that it thinks is going to be helpful for you, and it's then giving you that message. But it's not telling you, it's not saying, you know, don't ride a horse because you'll fall off again. It's making you have a bad back, so you can't ride the horse, so you can't fall off again. So it's sort of like, I don't want to stop you doing anything because you've got free will. However, take the hint. How did you get your bad back in the first place? Well, I fell off a horse. Well, don't go on a horse again. But it doesn't tell you that. It just drops hints. So people go around with pain. Sometimes the pain, they don't even know how it started. So that usually leads us into the fact that there's an emotional base to the pain. But even where there's physical damage, you don't need pain. The easiest thing I train people to deal with is arthritis. It's so simple to get rid of arthritis pain for people. I would say, I can honestly put my hand on my heart and say that the last, I've said 400 for too many years now, the last 500 people I've helped who came to me to say, I've got arthritis pain, I can't think of a single one that left with any pain at all.
That's incredible.
So because it's a simple thing for me, because normally I'm looking for an individual story. This person has some meaning behind this pain. There's a trauma, there's something that caused it. There might be an injustice behind it. There might be a reason to remember it, like having a low-level back pain to remind you you've got a bit of a slipped disc, so you don't want to pick that heavy thing up. That's a good reason for having low-level pain.
Absolutely.
But there's no need to give you this full-blown pain that says, and if you've got arthritis, I mean, I've had people come in like this with arthritis, and I say, look, what's happening? And this is as simple as this.
Wow.
And anybody who's got arthritis, just listen to this carefully. Your pain might go away. Honestly, it might go away just based on this. So I say to them, look, what you've got here is a message where your brain's going, hey, you've got arthritis. Oh, God, you've got arthritis. I'll give you this pain to remind you you've got arthritis. And I say to people, look, if I could get rid of it for you, but I had to phone you up every day and remind you you've got arthritis, you know, and that was the payback. You don't need pain, but I've got to phone you up every day, remind you. So I'd phone you up the first day. I go, hey, John, it's 10 o'clock. Stephen Blake here. Just thought I'd remind you, you've got arthritis. And I hang up. And then day 2, you hear the phone go, it's 10 o'clock. And I go, hi, Stephen. Just thought I'd remind you, you got arthritis. And I hang up quick. By day 3, you'd be hanging around near the phone. 10 o'clock comes. You pick the phone up. I go, hi, it's Stephen here. You go, I know I've got arthritis. Stop ringing me. Yeah. Well, why don't we tell your brain that? Why don't we just say to your brain, I can remember I've got arthritis. You do not need to remind me with pain. And something as simple as that, if your brain recognizes that,
Wow.
because it thinks it's looking after you, and as soon as you say, you're not looking after me, this is really annoying me, because pain is meant to be annoying. You know, if we liked pain, we'd do all sorts of damage, and we don't.
We would.
So it's meant to be annoying. So I think the best description is, think of pain like a fire alarm. Now, when a fire alarm goes off, it's not quite like pain, because pain has different levels to it. But so imagine when a fire alarm goes off, we're all in the same building and the fire alarm goes off. And I try to carry on giving this talk, and you're all going, I'm sorry, Stephen, can't hear you. And I go, well, just listen a bit better. Now, and I keep doing that, and I go, well, we better leave. Now, it's so annoying, it almost makes your ears bleed. So we go out. We have to leave because it's so annoying. But the message from the fire alarm is, get out or you'll die. So it has to be at volume 10. And we take notice of it because it is volume 10, and we go, I've got to get out or I'll die. And it's so good at it that they have to train us not to panic and to walk out rather than run out, so we don't end up as a pile of burning bodies in the doorway.
Of course.
So we get outside, and the fire brigade turn up, and they they go in. We're all out the building. We're all safe now. The fire brigade go in, and it would be simpler for them to turn the alarm off so they could all shout to each other. You know, I'm in the kitchen, it's all clear. I'm in the bedroom, it's on fire. Yeah. But they don't. And the reason is because people might go back in thinking it's safe. So it's the same when I train people up. I say, don't work on anybody until they've had a proper diagnosis from a medical practitioner.
Right. That's probably very important. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you went to a medical practitioner and, you know, you're having a heart attack, but, you know, you've been to see Stephen and he's gone, oh, I'll turn that off. And you haven't got any pain anymore. You go, I've got this sensation around my chest a bit, you know, it's a bit tight down my arm.
It wouldn't be good.
Yeah. So you've got to have the alarm. It's got to be at the right volume to get you to take the right action. And you can't turn the alarm off before you get it investigated. Yeah. So now they investigate, and what happens is the fire chief starts walking towards you. The fire alarm gets silenced because one of the people there will reset the alarm. Now, this is really important because lots of things we do as therapists, people say, can you turn off my anxiety? Can you turn off this sensation? Well, no, because all the sensations you have are there for a purpose. When somebody says, can you turn off my anxiety? They mean this constant anxiety. They don't mean, can you turn off my ability to be anxious? That would be a stupid thing to do.
Of course.
Like turning off a fear of spiders would be okay in the UK, but it wouldn't be much good in Australia.
Australia, no.
So you imagine the fire chief coming towards you, and he says, okay, we've reset the alarm now. And it was just a false alarm, and you'll all be okay. We've reset it, so if it does go again, please still come out the building. It might not be a false alarm this next time, and you're all safe. Now, imagine he comes out the building, he says, we're sick of these false alarms, but it only goes off when it's first triggered, so we're going to leave your alarm on. So now, for the next 5 years, we're all in a building with the alarm on, and everybody's going, should I get out? No, it's fine. It happened 5 years ago. That's chronic pain.
Absolutely.
It
Beautifully
might be
described, by the way.
Yeah, it might be somebody who says, okay, let's fool it. Let's cover it up with a cushion over the bell. Not realizing there's a microphone the other side of the room. And if you lower it with the cushion over the bell, the microphone doesn't pick it up. So it goes, I'll turn the volume up until it's 10 again. It might have to go up to 15 to get to 10. And
Wow.
this is why drugs don't work.
Mm-hmm.
If your brain works out, and it's a very careful calculation to get the right number for you individually.
Of course.
Imagine we're chatting and we go to cross the road and I stick my knee out and something smacks, a vehicle smacks it, shatters my knee. Yeah. Now I'll get a very strong pain in that knee to say there's damage there.
Get to the hospital, quick.
Yeah. But it won't be a 10 out of 10. Because if it's a 10 out of 10, I can now put my knee down and put some pressure on it, and all the broken bits of bone will come through the leg.
Of course.
So it'd probably give me an 8.
Mm.
And as I go to put some weight on it, it'll give me the full 10.
I see.
Now I know what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it can't give me the 10 initially. It has to give me something with a little bit there to say, this is what you need to do now.
Mm.
Yeah. So if somebody came along and went, oh, I'm the doctor, I've got some morphine on me, I'll inject straight into the spot, that'll cut the pain down. And it goes down to a 4. I now put weight on my leg and it does all the damage that my brain was worried it needed. So it will turn the volume up again. So something will interfere with the message, but it'll go, well, let's turn it up to 15 and we need an 8 there. Yeah. So me not being medically trained has been really good. Because most people in the world think you either have to numb the area, which you can do with hypnosis and that, or you play around with it and you manage pain, or you do exercises or something. And there's lots of other structures that have nearly got there where you journal it and you work out you're in more pain when you're stressed, so don't get stressed. But I sat down and I thought, just a minute, I know how the brain, well, roughly how the brain works, enough to help people.
Yeah.
So I know the practical application of the brain. So if you've got a message, the knee sending you a message, the brain sending the pain message down to the knee. Now, painkillers work in one of 2 ways. It either stops the signal from your knee going up to the brain a bit, or it stops the signal going back down to the knee to say, here's the amount of pain you need.
Right.
And I thought, well, if pain is just a message, why don't you just say to it, why don't you turn the message off? It's not needed, which you can do. So my method just really convinces people at the depth of the subconscious to say, okay, here's all the reasons why it's not a good idea to run with that. Literally a pun there. There's not a good reason to run with that message.
Absolutely. Makes sense.
So stop it. Don't send it out. Now, I think there's a thing called a pain review system. So it works initially. I mean, if you touch something hot or sharp, you'll immediately pull back from it.
Of course.
There is actually a split-second delay in that where it makes sure that when you pull away from it, you're not going to further danger or worse danger. Yeah. So there is a split-second decision there, but it's so quick that it sort of doesn't seem to happen. But the minute you move away from something hot or sharp, the next thing is you review what's the damage. Because sometimes we touch something hot and it hasn't actually caused any damage. It was painful enough to make you move your hand, but now we look down and we go, oh, I didn't leave it there long enough for it to actually fry anything.
Yeah.
So there's a pain review then. And that then says doctors or run it under a tap or what should we do next? And after 12 weeks, if you've still got that pain there, it just is giving you a message that is useless. There's absolutely no need for anybody in the world to have chronic pain from anything. Anything you can name. Wow. There's no reason for it. And I've worked on thousands of people and I've never had to give in yet and go, well, this is the one thing where I can't talk it out of it.
That's incredible, Stephen. Absolutely incredible. I mean, before we came on live, we were talking about this, weren't we? You know, it's like a technique like this. You should be on 10 o'clock news.
You know, well, there's a few reasons why it won't be. I mean, today, a percentage of your audience will be going, "This is bullshit." You know, he's just after the money. Well, I'm not. I'm not appearing for a fee tonight. I'm not asking you to join anything. I'm not asking you to come for a treatment. I'm just making you aware there is an alternative to suffering.
Absolutely, and that's what the channel's about. You know, educating people out there what is available. And
it's based not just in logic now. It is literally based in pain science. Now, the pain science, because about 5 years ago, I wrote to one of the top professors in the world and told him what I did and the results I got. And I'll talk about those statistics in a few minutes. And I wrote, and I don't think I sent him the statistics, but I told him what I did and how I did it. And I said, this is the bit you're missing. You know, would you like a chat? And he wrote back, and it was virtually, "You're a deluded guru."
No way.
I get 100 emails a week like this. And you might be a nice guy. You might talk to people nice, and you might get a bit of a placebo effect, and that's it. But it won't last, and you're no good, and it's not science. And I was about to write to him again a few months ago, and I thought, well, I'll just check his latest work, see if anything's progressed, if anything. And I looked at his latest work, and virtually everything I'd written to say to him, he's now proved with science.
Wow.
So, but he still hasn't been back in touch with me. Anyway, so I suddenly realized that science doesn't make the practice. People practice, find out something, and then science tries to prove it doesn't work. Exactly. And when they can't prove it doesn't work, then it becomes science. Because science isn't about proving something works, because if you really want to prove something works, you twist the figures to make it look that way. But if they try their best to break something and they can't break it, then they go, "Oh, this has got to be right."
It's got to be right, yeah.
So I think they're about 5 years behind what I'm doing. Now, the only bits that's missing that they haven't proved is that I've taken all their ideas and I've put them all together. And the little package I've done is there's a way at the end to make it go from, "Yeah, we understand this," to "Let's now talk you out of it." And most scientists aren't trained in the same way I am to actually get results by talking to people, to the subconscious.
Of course.
So that's the bit that's been missing, because they get people who are physiotherapists and all that, and doctors, and they're trained in the mechanics of it. And so when they become the scientists, they go, "But I don't understand this, because there's no actual real damage there. And they shouldn't be in pain." So they keep cutting them open and looking at it and going, "Why isn't there any pain there?" Of course, the more they open it up, the more they make the person fearful.
Absolutely.
The more pain they're in.
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense.
So it's just this idea that instead of interfering with the signal, just talk the unconscious into not sending that pain message out. So I call this brain bargaining.
Okay.
So I said there's a pain review system. So if I was just to say to you, "Oh, you've got a pain review system. I want your pain review system now to turn that pain off," it would take into account everything it took to get to that number it's already at. It would just say, "Yeah, I've recalculated," just the same. So I have to talk to people in a way that it also sinks into the unconscious at the same time. And that's quite easy. It's just called a chat.
No, you don't use hypnosis then?
Don't need a trance or anything. So I talk to people. When I give them the logic, there's a moment when you talk to people where they have a belief structure. And at first they fight you a bit. It's called cognitive dissonance. We don't want to believe in something when we believe something else really strongly. So if I can break through that cognitive dissonance and put such logic there that in the end you go, "Well, I can't see why that wouldn't work." Now, if I can get through to that point, because that's the only thing, I don't actually do anything to people. I talk to them and then their body does it. If I can convince them that they can get better, they get better. And if I can't convince them that they can get better, then they won't get better. So it's just my persuasive skills to get through to that bit of them that decides this number and make it reconsider. And when I first started this, I just had one argument for it. And that was, if you leave them in pain in an area, not only will it expand in size and get louder because it's now shouting at you, you're not listening.
Yeah.
It'll do that over a period of years, but really gradually, and you'll hardly notice it, but you will if you compare it back.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just forgetting where I was going with it. So if I can convince, this was it. So if I can convince you that if you stay in pain, what if something else happened in that area? Imagine you've got a really bad back and it's 8 out of 10 pain, and nothing to do with that problem. A tumor attaches itself to your spine and it's growing away. It can't tell you it's there until it gets to be a 9.
Yes.
And that tumor would, if it's a level 9 pain, it's probably killed you.
Of course. Absolutely. It makes a lot of sense.
Anything you have that you hold on to is disguising any new discovery in that area.
Right.
So if we look at the 2 types of pain, acute pain, very necessary. It has to be annoying, but it's deliberately at the minimum setting to make you do something. Chronic pain is just a bloody message going round and round and round. And the trouble is as well, it adds to itself, because the more you get worried about, well, there must be something really wrong here, the more you tense up, the more it puts you in pain.
Yeah.
So it's a fear factor.
Is it also the idea that your unconscious has got the best for you all the time, even though sometimes it can be like destructive behavior? So it actually thinks it's helping you do this.
Yeah, it must do.
Like a record with a needle stuck going round and round.
Yeah, well, it's not even that. It's just, it doesn't think to reconsider.
Right.
If it thinks it's got something right in the first place. So when I help people out of pain, I always say to the unconscious, well, thank you for giving them that. When you first gave them it, it was a good idea.
Of course.
But 10 years later, the alarm's still ringing. It's just not a good idea. And thank you for understanding that and letting go of it. So this is all it is. So I'm bargaining with them. Now, the initial thing was, I used to tell them, if you keep this old pain, it may disguise new pain. And so you're not actually keeping them safe, you're putting them in danger.
That's a good point. Very good.
And if the brain got that, it went, you're right. And because the brain actually is in charge of your breathing and your pH value and your blood pumping round and your temperature and everything else, it wants to keep you alive. It must do. If your unconscious didn't like it, it could kill you in an instant.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it looks after you and it's there to keep you alive. It's there for survival. So when it does something, even though it's annoying, it's just because it's frustrated by saying, do something. And you're going, no, I can't do anything. Do something. Yeah? So we have to convince it that shouting do something at them is not worth having. And then I started to recognize that it took into consideration far more than damage. You don't even need damage to carry on with pain. Yeah, it just needs the fear of damage. The fact that you might do further damage to that back that you hurt, or you might start something new off. And it does logical things. So quite often when I'm trying to find the story out from people, they'll tell me something. It'll be, I've started marathon running and this is happening now. And it might not even be anything to do with the legs. And I just go, but you just started marathon running, and that's incredibly tiring. And you've got a family and you've got this. Somebody I know was a guitarist and she's developed arthritis in her fingers. But that was to say, spend more time with your family. Because she was out doing gigs and things. So it's really interesting.
That is. I was going to ask you actually, Stephen, you know, some people, from my experience anyway, people actually can create pains in the body. Like they might say, "Oh, I'm such a pain in the neck." You know, like
Yes.
what you say to yourself, I think is quite important, because we fall into these behaviors that we do over and over again, and maybe that gives a signal to the unconscious to, oh, you want a pain in the neck.
For people who don't know how hypnosis works, you come along to a hypnotherapist and they find out what you're saying wrong. Because you're saying it in the negative. I don't want to have a panic attack. I don't want this. I don't want to smoke anymore. But the topic area is what the brain gives you. I don't want to smoke. Smoke. Oh yeah, I enjoy a fag. I don't want a panic attack. You've actually rehearsed what you don't want.
Exactly.
Now, if you said to me, "What do you want for your birthday?" and I said, "Don't buy me a pen," you probably buy me a bloody pen. Yeah. So we've got to understand that if we say something negative in our head, the unconscious's job is to fetch you, because you've got free will, and that's your conscious mind. Anything you think of, your unconscious will fetch for you. And it will still fetch it even if you put "don't" in front of it, or "I shouldn't," and then we have "I must," and then we have terrible things we say to, like "I'm fat, I'm stupid, I'm ugly, I'm clumsy," and we say all that. And then we have this cognitive dissonance. If we believe that we're unbalanced and we're clumsy, we then can't do something that proves the opposite. So you might be able to get somebody and get them on a tightrope and teach them how to do it, but they'd say, "Oh no, I'm clumsy, I can't do it." But if you got them to do it, they can't now hold the belief that they're clumsy anymore.
Yeah.
So this constant repetition. Now, so when somebody comes to me for a treatment, when I was just doing hypnotherapy, I would take from them what they're saying in their head. So I'd get the idea of how badly they're phrasing it. I would then park their consciousness by putting them into a trance. So their consciousness was on a beach somewhere or in a woods or wherever. And then I would go in and I'd say in their brain what they were saying, but the opposite. I'd phrase it in the positive. You know, I want this. I want to be able to eat the things that I want in the right quantities and the right levels. And I phrase it right.
Yeah.
And what happens is when I go in as a pretend they're conscious, because that's all you're doing as a hypnotherapist, you're pretending you're their conscious. You're going into their subconscious, meaning under the command of the conscious, but it's under the command of their conscious, not my conscious. So this is why we have to do a bit of trickery, and we have to get you in a trance, and we push your conscious out of the way because it's causing the trouble. And then we go in as though we're your conscious, but we're acting on your behalf, and we put in their commands and instructions. That's what they're called. Yeah. So I worked out, well, this is too much like hard work. And a lot of people don't like hypnosis. They think, you know, it's the devil's work or something.
Yeah. Come across that a few times.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with people. I'm just going to say, well, I don't need to go in your head. I'm going to tell you what to say to your subconscious, and it will then take it as an instruction. But you've got to understand that everything you say in your head is an instruction anyway. And if you're asking for the wrong things, that's why you get it. So that's all I'm doing now. I'm missing out the middleman of me having to come in to part your consciousness, for me to go into your unconscious.
Yeah.
That's too hard work.
It can be a bit of a kerfuffle, I must admit.
Yeah. So without that, it's really easy. Now, the only thing you have to do is convince the person when you so everything I do is in the chat. And I call it a chat because if I quiz people and I look like I'm superior to them, you know, if I look like I'm the doctor and you know I've got the white coat on, or even I've got the dicky bow and the suit on, and I'm powered, you know, I'm seen as this high-powered thing.
Yeah,
it's not the right balance.
No.
So I chat to people, and then in a nice chat, because it moves around like you hadn't planned, it draws out the things you need to know. And when you do it in that way, they're also convincing themselves, because I used to be in sales, and sometimes I was very ethical in sales, that I would guide people towards the thing they were asking me.
Right.
Or they describe what they wanted, and I go, no, you don't want that one. Your best one you want is this. And it wouldn't always be the dearest or whatever. It'd be the one that they're telling me they need.
That's definitely ethical.
Yeah. But you had to find out what they need first. You didn't just say, you want a printer, oh, take that one. Everybody buys that one.
Yeah.
It would be, well, what you're printing, what what size, how often, how often you use it and all that. So I have this chat where sometimes with people, you put an idea in there that they then run with, and they go, oh, I think I'll do this. And then you go, that's a bloody good idea. Oh, that's a really good idea. Yeah, you should do that. But once
you put the idea in there, but they've come up with the idea. And
so once they take ownership of it, because they're going, oh, this is my idea type of thing. And you don't have to go, well, I thought of that. If it's going to work for them, just stand back and let it work. So I work in that really easy way where people will tell me stuff that they didn't think they were going to tell me, and even things they didn't know they knew. But I have to watch them, and I have to listen to every word carefully, because the way they phrase it will give me the answer. And if I'm not watching them at the same time, because sometimes there's little tells like you have when you're playing poker, sometimes their eye will twitch or something. You think, well, I haven't seen that before. And then they mention the same thing in the next sentence, and the same word gives them the eye twitch. And you go, oh, that's it. So it sounds like I've done a lot of theory so far. So if I put a bit of meat on the bones, a guy came to see me, and he'd got a deformed foot. He'd been in a motorbike accident when he was 17, and it broke his foot, and it's deformed, and he has to have a built-up shoe, and he's been in agony with it ever since. And even to get to the bathroom in the morning when he gets out of bed, he has to put his shoe on. So he came along. Now, he'd not only had this motorbike accident at 17, he'd had a serious car accident only about 4 years before he came to see me, where he broke virtually every bone in his body with a head-on car crash.
Gosh.
Something like a combined speed of 118 mile an hour. And the other driver was killed.
Wow.
This is how bad it was. Now, you would expect that one would be the problem, and he would be distressed by that one. But I noticed the distress was when he was 17. And he was on a motorbike, and the car pulled out, and he hit it, and he flew over the bonnet and landed on the road the other side. And he described it as my ankle hit the floor first, and it shattered. And I'm probably exaggerating it just so people notice it, because if I said it how he did, you probably wouldn't notice it. But he said my ankle shattered, and his eyes lit up, and there was that look of agony, just split second of it, like, And he then mentioned it a few sentences later, and he went, shattered. And I went, okay.
It's important.
So I thought, I've got to get away from this word shattered. Now think about this. If this was a glass and I dropped it now and it fell in half, I can't say it shattered. Shattered has to be lots of pieces that go everywhere.
Absolutely.
Same as the word scattered. Yes, shattered, scattered, very similar. So anything when we tell a story, if we exaggerate it, the next time we use it, we've overwritten the original story. So we bring it out with the exaggeration as though that's the true story.
Absolutely.
And I know this because the more I told this story, the bigger my hands came apart. Until I watched the original video of this, me working on this guy where he went like that.
Yeah.
So what I did was I retold his story he told to me. Now, this is not anything I've ever been taught. I retold his story, but I minimized everything and made it ridiculous. So I said, so what you're telling me then is your ankle shattered. I said, so what happens is you hit the car, you fly through the air, you don't know what's going to happen. You might even die. Your ankle hits the floor and your ankle bursts open. and that bone shatters and bits of bone go all over the road, and you have to hop around getting these bits of bone to pick them up to take to the hospital with you. And he goes, no, that didn't happen. And I go, so what you're saying then is, and he said he broke into 3 bits and they glued it and they pinned it. And it's the pin that gives me the problem. I went, oh, so what actually happened then is you hit the floor, your ankle didn't burst open, your ankle bone crumpled into 3 bits within your foot. You're then taken to hospital. They open it up. They take the 3 bits out while you're under anaesthetic. Now, you didn't know you had this bone before, and they put it back together so it was stronger than it originally was. Wow. It's been glued, it's been pinned, it's better than it ever was, and it goes back in your foot. I can't see why you'd have a problem with that. And he said, it's gone. I said, I'm really sorry. What's gone? And he said, the pain.
Wow.
And the pain had gone. So this is, I've got a video of this. This is all in about 25 minutes or so.
It's crazy.
I then say, well, when did it hurt? And he literally, he's in my room, and I've not put him in trance. I've at one stage got him sat there with his eyes closed. And I do say, your eyes will open and you'll come back in the room. So he'd come back in the room, and he was just so blown away that he was almost unintelligible for 20 minutes.
Wow.
And so I said, what do you do for a living? And he said, I go up and down ladders. That's when it hurts the worst, but I've got to earn a living. I've got a wife and kids. And so I brought him a step ladder in. And he filled in his form about how it worked for him halfway up a ladder, which he stayed up there. And he said 2 minutes up a ladder usually is too much for him to bear.
Wow.
And he was up there for about 15 minutes filling this form in while we asked him questions and things. And this was in front of a group of people because I was actually training. He was.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. He was a volunteer, and I think there was 5 people watching. And his wife and daughter came. And it's really interesting because his daughter, at one stage, it was sort of flitting between everybody. And I thought his daughter's been ignored. I said, what do you think, Poppy? And she said, oh, it's wonderful. I told my dad it would work. She said, but he said it was rubbish and it was.
Kids, don't you love them, right?
My daddy said it would be a load of bunkers. and he goes all embarrassed and he starts saying, no, what I said was, I don't think it'll work, but even if it works 1%, I'm happy to go.
That's incredible.
So, of course, he was blown away when he didn't have any pain at all.
That's amazing.
And I've seen him, I haven't seen him the last year or 2, but even 4 years later, I was in contact and he was still free of pain. And he still can't believe it. He still can't believe he's free of pain.
That's unbelievable. Because one of the questions I was going to ask you was, does it matter if people actually believe it? And you've just answered that.
No. There's
he obviously didn't think it was going to work.
You must want it to work.
Yeah.
Now, there's a big difference between want and need. And you'd think need would be better than want, but it isn't. If you need it, but you don't want it, it's not going to work. If you want it, even if you don't believe it, it'll still work. Because this is the thing about working with anybody with the mental processes. If somebody comes along and they go, yeah, I wouldn't mind being out of pain, that's not a big message to pass to the subconscious to say, will you turn this off?
Yeah.
Now, in the same way that if somebody came to stop smoking, we don't get the people who can crush a packet of cigarettes and throw them in the bin and go, I'll never smoke again, because they gave them a message to their own brain. This is my determination. So if somebody comes along with no determination whatsoever to get better, they won't. Why would it? Why would it say I'm going to change?
Absolutely. And you do get secondary gain, I think they call it, isn't it? Where some people want to have the pain because it serves a purpose for them. More people take more notice of them and all that sort of stuff. So I guess that.
I don't get those because obviously if you wanted to come for a treatment, you wouldn't phone me. So I always say, are you doing this for you or are you doing it for somebody else? And if they go, well, my wife wants me to, I go, well, do you want to? And if they go, well, I go, ring me up when you're convinced that you want it.
They've got to be at the threshold, haven't they? Got to be at the threshold.
Yeah, they've got to want it.
I would have thought a lot of people who are in agony would be, you know.
You'd be surprised how many people I offer this to for free. So somebody will walk past me and at a
hobbling or something,
like a mind, body, spirit event. I'll be stood there at the side and I'll go, "Are you in pain?" Yeah. Or they'll just ignore me, and I go, "Would you like me to help you? Because it's free today." And they go, "I'm all right, thanks." And I go, "I know you're all right. I'm all right. You're not."
Yeah.
Don't tell me you're all right. You're not. I can see you're not. I'm all right because I'm not in pain. I've spent my whole bloody life in pain, so I know what pain's like.
It beggars belief, doesn't it? It's difficult to understand that type of thinking. You know, it's a bit of a weird.
But you see, the secondary game bit only comes in a few times for me. And I usually, when I work, when I train people, I usually, if it's live training in the room with me, I'll bring in somebody I've never met in my life. I usually pick somebody with fibromyalgia, which is incurable, and I've helped, I would say, 1,000 people now get better from it. And I get somebody with fibromyalgia, and they sit in the chair, and I say, "Look, we haven't met, have we?" And they go, "No, I don't know who you are." We had a 2-minute chat on the phone just to make sure they were suitable, and I work on them in front of people so that they can see it. And I even had one of my students go away and say, "Stephen's so brave. He gets somebody he doesn't know and he works on it. What if it didn't work?" And I'd never thought of that.
You know what? That's it. That's a good point, actually. Because when you start thinking that, that's when you might have, it comes across, doesn't it?
I even have to teach this. When you go into a room with somebody, it's a let's see attitude.
Yeah.
You have to go, when they say, "Can you help with this?" Or, "Have you worked on this before?" If you haven't, you just say, "No, but I've worked on similar things."
Yeah.
And when they say, "Will it work?" You just go, "Let's see. You're here. Do you want it?" "Yes." "Well, if you want it and you want it well, I'll talk to you and you should be free of it by your finish. Are you ready to be pain-free now?" And if they go, "Yes," we carry on. And if they go, "Oh, that would be all right," I go, "Well, shall we bother?" So anyway, sorry, the purpose of me telling you this is, I get a phone call from a woman. She's got fibromyalgia. She wants to be the volunteer for the following Sunday. And we chat. And usually if somebody's got more than that wrong with them, or it's an emotional thing and they were abused when they're 6, they usually drop a hint in there with it. Because people are quite nice to not sort of, will this affect it? Have you still got time if I've got this as well? So I can usually point them out and go, "No, that's too much for me." But I got through this with her and it was fine. She wanted to be free of it. She's a single mum, got young kids, and it was making a misery of her life. And I said, "Okay, I'll book you in for Sunday. Are you ready to be free of pain?" She went, "Yeah."
Wow.
And I said, "It's so Sunday at 10 o'clock. And she said, "Oh, I'm pleased it's Sunday and not Monday, because that's when I get my brand new disability car I've been waiting for." and I went, "Oh my God. And she went, "What's wrong, Stephen?" I said, "You won't be disabled on Monday. you can't take that car." She said, "But I've been waiting 4 years for it." I said, "But you can't take it and you won't need it. You're not disabled." And she went, "But my house is paid for. I can't work. Everything's paid for. I could lose the car, the kids, and the house." And I said, "So do you think this would work then? If I give you, you've had fibro for, I think it's 10 or 15 years. You've had fibro for 10 years. Now, if I give you the chance of going away without fibro, but you could lose your house, your kids, and your car, which is going to be more painful for you?" She said, I've put up with fibro for 10 years. I could keep putting up with it. I couldn't put up with losing the house, the kids, and the car."
Wow.
So in the UK, it frustrates me, because if I got a contract to help people out of fibro, and they gave them a year from when they got better to getting back into work, I could get them better almost instantly that day. And within a few months, they'd be back to the fitness levels and their muscles built up and everything else. And a lot of the byproducts of their illnesses would have gone, because there's more than just fibro is not just pain. There's all sorts of bowel troubles and all that.
Mm-hmm.
If I could deal with that, they would have 3 months to get fully fit and 9 months to get retrained and get back into work. But they can't. If they lose all the benefits the next day, they've just got to hold on to the pain.
Bless.
It's a horrible system.
Yeah. Definitely. You know, people watching, Steve, especially people who have got chronic pain and they're looking for something like this, which is the whole point of this.
Yeah.
You know, is there plenty of old Pain2Go practitioners in the country? Or
yeah, I've trained most of them myself, and I've got a few trainers that train people as well. So altogether, we've trained 1,500 people worldwide now.
Wow.
Most are in the UK, but I did a tour of Australia and New Zealand. I've been to America training, Holland, Belgium, several other places. So, and if anybody's interested in learning to do it, I literally teach it in 8 hours. And you don't have to be a therapist already. You do need those people skills. If you're good with people, you know, if you're in retail or something and you get on well with your customers, or you're a hairdresser or something and you chat to people, if you've got the idea of how you work with people and listen to them and everything else, that's the skill you need, and the desire to help others. If you've got that, I can train you in 8 hours to do this, and you don't need medical training or anything, because you're not dealing with medical issues. You're dealing just with one thing: the ability to talk to the brain just by talking to people and sowing that seed in there that there is hope. You can be free of this, and that what it thinks is protecting you is not protecting you. It's actually harming you. And the moment you learn how to do that, you can work on almost any type of pain. And I also work on people with illnesses and hay fever and period pains and the menopause, turning off hot flushes.
Wow.
It's all in a similar manner, that the unconscious has got something wrong. And if you think that it's running hundreds of thousands of programs every minute, you know, the fact it gets one of them wrong.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
We shouldn't really complain, should we?
No.
So, but when I was having this conversation earlier, quite often, particularly about therapy, they talk about, well, you've got to kill the old you, the old ego, and build this new one.
Yeah.
And I was saying that's total bullshit. What happens is, even if you've got a serious anxiety problem, is you're running one program that has kept the alarm going.
Exactly.
And you're now not noticing things you should do because the alarm's already running. And you turn that one program off and you go back to how you should be. You don't have to lose the 99% of things you've learned that are really good for you.
Absolutely.
You don't have to kill the old self and build a new one. You're doing one little aspect. And people don't have therapy because they think they have to kill the whole self. I don't change people's personalities. I can't. I wouldn't if I could. And I tell them that. You know, the way, everything I found out about fibromyalgia, ME, and chronic fatigue syndrome it's always people who overdo things, mentally or physically or both. And once I'd worked that out, I worked out how to help people. And I don't get them to slow down, because that's what it's always focused on. You've got to slow down. But if it's not in your nature to slow down, you won't slow down. So I just get them to prioritize what they have to do. But I also teach them how to say no. Because they're not just doing their own work, they're usually doing everybody else's work as well.
Absolutely. That's very common. That is. Lots of people.
So it's really, most things I deal with are simple, and I can deal with most things in an hour. And sometimes, particularly fibro and things like that, I'll sort of allow about 3 hours.
Is there more emotional work with the fibromyalgia? Yeah.
And if your brain can't cope with an emotional issue, I dealt with somebody whose brother was killed, actually murdered, and she had a back pain from when she found out about him being murdered. And it was literally that it was to stop her thinking about him being murdered. And once I linked the two and said, well, this is just a distraction technique and you don't need it anymore now because 9 months have gone and he's been buried now. And, you know, and I said, I'll help you in the break with some grieving issues. I'll help you to turn off the grieving or remove the grieving if you're ready to do so. But your back pain can go now. And I literally set up a thing called an idiomotor response. Now, you would have covered this with Bob Burns last week.
Yeah, you like to think his swan is an idiomotor response. But anyway, go on.
But an idiomotor response is simply something you cannot do consciously,
Exactly.
and it feels and looks the same.
Yes.
So I usually set up a standard forward lean. And once we've convinced them that they don't need the pain anymore, I say, are you ready to let go of the pain? So we get a conscious yes. And then I say, let's check this out with your unconscious. And then we set up this idiomotor signal, we set up a yes signal, and then I just say, is your unconscious willing to let go of that pain with everything it now knows and reconsidering everything? Is it willing to let go of that pain? And we get a yes. And then I say, let go of the pain now. Tell me when it's done or started. And it goes yes, and the pain goes.
Wow.
And it could have been the longest one I can think of is a guy who lifted a bag of cement when he was 17 and he was now 76.
Gosh.
It took me it's going to take me as long to tell the story as it did for the treatment.
Wow.
I literally said, he lifted a bag of cement. They don't make them that big anymore because a lot of people injured themselves on it. It's only half the size now. Are you ever going to lift a bag of cement again? And he said, don't be stupid. I said, no, I want an answer to that. Are you ever going to lift a bag of cement again? And he said, no, Stephen, I'm 76. And I said, well, let's tell your brain that you're never going to lift a bag of cement. Therefore, it doesn't need to give you a bad back so that you won't lift a bag of cement again. Wow. And he lost 59 years worth of pain, and literally it just went. It left him.
Wow. That's incredible. Absolutely incredible, Stephen.
And even before I said it, he was saying, well, my pain won't go anyway because I'm 76 now, so I'll have arthritis, I'll have all these problems. I went, it doesn't matter. And his pain went.
Bloody incredible, I have to say it. I think a lot of people are going to get so much from this this talk, Stephen. I think it's fascinating, and it's it's so good to let people know that something as powerful as this out there. Well, what about training, Stephen? Have you got any, like, if anyone's watching, any therapists, because there's a good chance some therapists will be watching, or whoever might want to learn how to do it so they can maybe, help their family or friends or whatever. Have you got anything coming up in the next?
I have people who learn it to work on themselves, but literally when I'm training them, I usually work on the group to turn the pain off anyway. Obviously, they don't get that individual sort of treatment, but it usually goes away, or it dampens down enough so they can then have a treatment. And now we've got a group of 1,500 people. Anybody else will work on you for free anyway, just for the practice. Yeah. So if they go to my website, you can find out more about it.
This website I've got on the front here.
Yeah, the last bit you don't need on there. Just Pain2Go.com.
Okay.
Don't put www in front of it. It won't find it. Either put in Old Pain2Go or put the HTTPS in front.
Okay.
When you go there, there's a couple of buttons at the top, and it really directs you into, do you want to know about having a treatment and how it works, or do you want to train?
Okay.
So if you know, you can obviously have a look around the whole site, but if you know which one you want, it's simpler then to just go there, and the menu changes, so it's a smaller menu for each one. But there's a Q&A in there. There's if you look at the testimonials, there's 150 or more testimonials from people who've just had a session, and then somebody's pulled a camera out and gone, would you like to talk about it? And 2 or 3 minutes of them going, I had a level 8 pain and it's gone. And you can tell it isn't paid for actors because it's rubbish filming. And it's not just me, it's practitioners I've trained. I allow them to send me these in, and I put them on the website. And it's just people who are just looking really puzzled that they can't find the pain anymore. And we tell them not to keep going looking for it. But I've seen things that even I've thought for several days that was a miracle. And I've gone around just like, that was a miracle, that was a miracle. And then I've had to work out why it isn't. And then I've been able to teach it to say, this is what you do. Right. It looks miraculous, but it's actually logic. And I've seen some things that have took me days to fathom out why it wasn't a miracle. And some things I've just said to people that have worked. A woman came who'd been disabled from birth and was in pain, but her body was distorted. And she only had the movement from her waist forward and backwards. And her husband rang to book a session, said, was it possible? And I said, I think so, but let me talk to her. Is she up? I wanted to know it wasn't just him that wanted it. And, sometimes people go, well, yeah, but she was enthusiastic for it. So she came and she's carried into the place. And after about 20 minutes, I'd got rid of the pain. And I didn't look for the story, because if you're born like that, well, you're not going to know the story, are you? So I just went from the angle, and sometimes I'm so brutal with people that it sinks in. I said, you're in pain because your body's distorted. Now, you don't need reminding every day with pain that your body's distorted. You can look in a mirror. Now, I have to do this with a real poker face, because it's hurtful to say that.
Of course.
But I know this is the only thing that's going to work. So I said, you don't need pain. You look in a mirror, you go, yeah, my body's distorted, I don't need pain. And you can do that. And I said, so you don't need pain. So I literally set something, I can't remember what I did, but it was an eye movement or something. But I set up the yes signal, and it agreed to turn off the pain, and her pain went. And she was young 40s, I think, and her pain went away. And she cried, and her husband cried, and I was close to tears.
Wow.
But the interesting thing is, we've got 40 minutes left of the session. So he said, it's almost like, what else can you do? So the husband, bless him, he said, can you do anything for a posture? And I said, I don't know. This is the most extreme I've ever seen. So what do you think? I said, let's see. You're here, you've paid, let's see.
Absolutely. Make the most of the rest of the time.
Yeah, and because I don't work with people in trance, all I do is I get them to sit back in the chair, close their eyes, and just drop into relaxation. I could explain that, but I won't. I just get them relaxed, and I put my hand on the shoulder and work with them. So when my hand's on the shoulder, it's like we're working together. So that's almost the hypnotic bit. And then when I take my hand off, it's like you're on your own. So, and the words just came. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just said, just make sure you relax back in the chair. I mean, this is the only movement she's got, is backwards and forwards. Her head didn't move, nothing. And so she leans back in the chair, and I put my hand on the shoulder, and I just said this. I want your body to go back in. Oh, God. Sorry.
Wow, Stephen, that's very powerful stuff.
And this wasn't me making it. This wasn't me consciously. This was my unconscious.
Wow.
I made this up on the spot, and it was just, I want your body to go back into perfect balance and alignment as soon as it's safe and effective to do so. That's probably the best sentence I've ever made up in my life.
Wow.
And I took my hand off her shoulder. Now, she's just there, eyes shut. And I always say, I want your unconscious to open your eyes for you and bring you back in the room when it's finished installing that. And the idea of that is, if you just tell people to open their eyes when they're ready, they do it before it's done.
I see.
Because they're making a conscious decision to come back in the room, and they might be embarrassed that, well, I don't want to be here with my eyes shut. Anyway, so I left it like that. Now, the husband's obviously like, will it work? And I said, I don't know. He said, well, how soon will we know? I said, it could be now, could be a few minutes, months, years, could be anything. It might not even work. And he went, oh. While I'm telling him this, she's here next to me, because I'd had my hand on the shoulder. He's the other side of the room in a chair. So I'm talking to him. I've moved my hand. And I always sit where I can see people out the corner of my eye. And I saw her do the one movement that she could do. She leant forward. But as she leant forward, she leant back, and the hands dropped, and her head turns to watch me and him talking.
Wow.
So I'm telling him, you know, we might find, we might not, and all that. And I'm seeing all this movement out of the corner of my eye. So I think I stopped in mid-sentence to look and what the hell's going on here?
Wow.
He's like, why Stephen stopped talking? So he looks at her. His jaw drops. His wife then does like the old tennis thing and goes, what are you two looking at?
Wow.
And we both went, you. And she went, why are you looking at me? And then and her hands came up to her head to like, oh my God.
Unbelievable, isn't it? Unbelievable. So, I mean, in a beautiful way, of course.
It was the weirdest of things because I've almost lost consciousness of what happened next. But I was so shaken by it. I remember them getting in the car and going, and they paid me and everything. But I can't remember a name. I can't remember anything.
Wow.
And for 2 days, I was going around like, I've seen a bloody miracle. And then I was like, but you don't perform miracles. But you've seen one. I did it for 2 days. Then the answer came to me. Because I've dealt with people like that before who've locked up in being attacked. So because this happened when she was born, I think she was in the womb and her mother was attacked. And I think the baby went into, the adrenaline would go from the mother through into the baby.
Yeah.
She'd hear all these loud noises, and the only thing we're frightened of when we're born is loud noises and one other thing.
Yeah.
So she would have heard these loud noises. She'd gone in the protective state, and then the body would have locked her in that state.
Wow.
Now, if somebody's in a wheelchair and they come to see you, if they've been in a wheelchair for a long time, they lose muscle mass because they're not using the muscles.
Of course.
But she'd been in tension all her life. So she'd got the muscles.
Wow. I was going to ask you that, actually, because that's what I was going to say.
So she's got the muscles because she's been in tension all her life. Wow. So all I actually did, and it sounds miraculous, but all I actually did was help a 40-year-old woman relax for the first time. That's all I did.
I can see that is one of the times that really stands out for you. Just the fact that where you got a little bit, well, quite emotional when you were talking about it. Very special moment, that one, Stephen.
I've turned into a big softie. I don't cry in front of the clients, but I never know when it's going to happen because I did something the other week where a tradesman came round and he was in agony and back pains and all this sort of thing. And he'd had to go to a sort of maintenance troubleshooting job, you know, instead of installing things and lifting them. And I found out he was in pain. And he said, what do you do? And I said, I turn pain off for people. And he went, I said, leave 15 minutes at the end before you go. Don't book your next job in, you know, and I'll do this for you. And I worked with him, and his biggest thing was he couldn't lift his grandchildren up.
Oh, bless.
And they were only quite small. And so I did this treatment on him really quick and missed a lot of it out, but I knew it would still work. And he was great, and he went along with it. And I brought him round, and he opens his eyes, comes back in the room, and he goes, I've got no pain. And it's usually like 5 or 6. And I turned around and I picked up a dining room chair. We got some oak dining room chairs, quite heavy. And I said, put your hands out. And he put his hands out, and I put this chair in his hands.
Wow. And
he stood there and he sobbed.
Wow.
Now, I told the story a few times, and then I told it once, and I just wept when I told it. And I think sometimes, because I've seen it so often now, I don't appreciate the difference it's made to them.
Yes.
And I think because this is my granddaughter, you know, and I can now pick her up. And because he cried, it was like, this is a biggie.
It's beautiful as well, because I know I don't know exactly what you know, but I have that myself, and it's such a beautiful feeling when you get that, when it all well, I love it.
If anybody says they've got the best job in the world, they go, oh my God. No, I couldn't imagine getting more joy out of life than I do working. I could go to the best party in the world on a yacht or whatever, and I wouldn't enjoy myself half as much as I do when I work with somebody and they get better. It's just the most incredible feeling. And this is why, and when I teach it, I'm just so enthusiastic for 8 hours. And I teach it differently every time, so I keep that enthusiasm. And it's just lovely to share it with somebody else and see them get passionate about it.
Well, I'm certainly gonna be doing your course, definitely, because it'll be a good technique for my tool bag, definitely.
Absolutely.
So, well, it's been incredible. I'm really going to get this video out there, because I think so many people need to see this. And
yes, thank you.
You know, and what a beautiful way to end our talk with that beautiful story. You know, that miracle, and obviously the guy who couldn't pick up his child. And for everybody that's out there that's watching this, especially on the recording, you know, who's in chronic pain, there's something available to you. There's things you can do besides taking drugs and just putting a plaster over it. You can tell the brain to turn it off. And I just want to say thank you so much, Stephen, for coming on. It's an absolute joy. And I've really enjoyed it. I'm actually going to watch this again a few times, because you come out with some really good nuggets there. I'm gonna dissect it. And
I've got thousands of stories.
I bet you have. So obviously, there's lots of practitioners all over the country. If you want to find a practitioner, if you want to train in it, you go onto Stephen's website, and there'll be a tab there where you can go on there, and it will explain, you know, everything about that, about the course and everything. And so super duper.
Brilliant.
Excellent, Stephen.
Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for everybody for watching for an hour and 60.
Excellent. And I just want to say before we go to everybody that's watching it, thanks for watching. And if you get a chance to like and subscribe to the channel, the YouTube channel, Free the Mind UK, Chat with the Therapist, it's really helpful, because the algorithms and all that, the videos get shown more, and more people get to find out about all these wonderful techniques that are available. So thank you so much, Stephen.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody else. And we'll see you next Thursday again. Lovely job.